Welcome to Thriving Tribesmen. My name is Kuri, your host, and I'm excited to be making this episode. So generally when I get my episodes from the conversations I have with the guys within Reignited Men. So a lot of the episodes, it's mainly for them, but at the same time, hopefully it gets to help you guys. So we've revisited some of the... So there was a conversation I was having with one of the guys, and I thought this was going to be useful because we are revisiting some of an episode that I did some months ago, but I just sort of went overview. But today I'm just going to try and dive in a little bit deeper, because generally when we're going through relationships, one thing that makes relationships good, especially when you have happiness, you have to have experienced sadness and the negative part. There's no way of navigating a relationship and be constantly good. And that's probably one of the issues when it comes to relationships, because you've got so much high expectations to maintain a good relationship. Therefore, when you face challenges, you think that you're failing at relationships when really that's just part of being in a relationship. So generally when challenges arise, usually it's a symptom of a problem. And generally those problems are very difficult to see, because when it comes to any relationship challenge, you are within a loop. And as I describe it, it's like a challenging loop or something. And this loop consists of there being a problem, and when you don't recognize the problem, generally you get into anxiety. And this is not just you, but it's your partner. Sometimes it's shared anxiety, where you're both feeling anxious of something that is unresolved normally. And sometimes it can be on your partner's end. And generally when it's in your partner's end, you are trying to support them and help them, but you don't know how to help them and support them because they don't even know how to identify what the problem is. So they end up in this cycle where there's a problem, they feel anxiety, it builds into stress, and then sometimes builds into depression. Not always at the time, but it tends to happen that it goes into depression. So they end up in this cycle, which by going through that cycle where they now end up in depression, it creates more problems, then builds up more anxiety, and then stress, then depression. Then it goes into this real weird cycle where you're continuously having to, for lack of a better term, nurse your partner. So now you're nursing them instead of sharing this good relationship, because you're constantly now almost like a care worker to a certain extent. So you're now providing care because they're going through this looping cycle, which can be extremely challenging. And when it comes to then trying to conversate or at least communicate about it, usually those conversations are very, very difficult to navigate. And it's that question of how much can I push in order to get a good result from this conversation, and how much can I push without triggering and making it worse. So when it comes to these conversations, we've always given the framework of the 5 whys. And what that is that you generally can ask 5 whys to get to the root cause of a problem. Because when it comes to the problem, because you're in that loop, it's really hard to identify where is that root cause of this problem. Because if you imagine if you're in that cycle, because it's a symptom, it's quite easy to focus on the stress. It might be easy to focus on the depression. It might be easy to focus on the anxiety and think that's the problem. But generally, it's contributed off of something else. So having a framework to have a conversation and really getting deeper becomes a very important thing. So like we used the 5 whys in my relationship and with the guys within the coaching program. And generally, whenever we say the 5 whys, there is a sequence of things that you have to expect. And when you expect them, it helps you not to be reactive. Because when most people have conversations about, especially the ones that are challenging conversations, generally most people don't keep themselves in check. Then they react in a negative way, which then amplifies whatever is going on, which is the problem. So instead of resolving it, that challenge becomes even more challenging because now it's unresolved. Now you've got this unresolved conversation that is now adding anxiety to, or what's already anxiety, and adding more stress, and then creating more problems. So the 5 whys becomes a very good framework of getting to the bottom of what the actual issue is. And generally the conversation will go along the lines of, baby, I can see that you're under a lot of stress, and under a lot of challenge, you're facing some challenging times right now. Why is that going on? So generally when you do that, they will give you something that is superficial, and superficial answer, oh yeah, just work, and the kids are acting up and so on. And those generally are going to be superficial ones. I've been doing so much dishes and so on. And most people within sexless relationships, they look at this superficial one and then they act off of the superficial one. So they say, oh, I'm feeling tired, I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling to sleep. And then they go on, because I'm doing so much. So then they'll go on to start cleaning the house and then start washing the dishes and start doing also on so forth. And they've just gone on to the first level, surface level. And then therefore you now just sort of, this is the reason why when you do all of that stuff, it never works, because that's the superficial thing. That's the thing that they think is the actual problem. But generally, if you say, okay, I see that you're finding it difficult to do the dishes, when the kids' time for bedtime, I can see that you're already too tired to deal with it. So maybe I might take over with that. But I know that you're tired and you're feeling this way. Well, you were okay with it before. Why is it that it's now overwhelming right now? See, going to the second question, I've listened to what she said. I haven't just glossed over it. I've managed to just, again, you're going a little bit deeper. That going in deeper. Now, generally, when you go in the second question or the second why, they will start blaming you. So they're like, yeah, and you, whenever you come from work, then you never help out, and you're always on your phone, or you're doing something, whatever. They'll be like, yes, I get it, and I'm sorry for doing that. That's something that I do often. I see your complaint. But before, that wasn't much of an issue. Why is it an issue now? And definitely, usually that's when it goes a little bit deeper. Then it's now shame. Like, I don't want us to be that couple that is always ignoring each other. And then what do the children think? So they start getting into this sort of shared shame, or sometimes she looks at her own shame, or the places where she might be failing. So she starts pointing out all these failures. And then when you don't react to any of that, and sometimes when they blame, some people, when they dive in a little bit deeper, they end on blame, because they will say something that will blame you that is true and that is very triggering. And usually it's more of the fact that the conversation is becoming a little bit more intense, and you're getting them to put a spotlight on themselves internally, which is generally quite difficult for most people, not just women. It's very difficult for them. So that having to look internally is a very high pressure situation, which then needs you not to be non-reactive, even when they are blaming you and trying to be getting you to react, because it's a tactic that makes you avoid the conversation because they've made you react. So it becomes very important to actually see what is going on. So they blame you, they shame you, and then there's usually a resistance, like, I really don't want to be talking about this right now. I'm just too tired for this. I don't want you to talk about this. That's the next bit. When you ask the next why, it's like, let me dismiss this whole conversation. Let me try and stop it because I don't like where it's going. And this is where you have to hold your ground so you can keep going. When you keep going with this, generally, this is just before the breakthrough, where they say, I feel tired like this because I don't feel like I'm a good mom. And when she says that, that's usually a breakthrough. I don't feel like I'm a good wife. Then you get to a breakthrough. Or I don't want to be like my mom. I don't want to be in the relation. They will tell you the real cause of what's causing the relationship issue. So-and-so just recently got divorced. And she's fearing that might happen to her relationship. She's feeling insecure. There's always something that's going on underneath the surface. And generally most guys, and I'm being guilty of this, whenever we're trying to at least figure out what's causing the challenge, what's causing the stress within the relationship. We always take the superficial thing and then run with it without really going to dive in deeper or what might be causing the problem. And therefore, by really hitting at the root cause, you actually stop it from becoming something terrible like a sexless relationship. So again, when it comes to recapturing a relationship that's full of sex, having these difficult conversations becomes a most important thing. And again, obviously, with calibration and so on and so forth. But hopefully this has been helpful for you guys and something that you can now take away and really implement into your relationship. So thank you very much for listening. I'll be seeing you guys soon. Take care.